Dragon Quest The Adventure of Dai Episode 10 begins a new arc. It's called On to Papnica Kingdom. That's the name of the episode. But for the first part of the episode, it does kind of end the previous arc with Dai not only getting an award from the king and being proclaimed a hero, my bad. He gets proclaimed a hero. But also, Brass goes back to the island and he's pretty much saying, until the Demon King is defeated, Dai will be out there and whatever. And then we kind of actually see the villains formulating a new plan. And it culminates the early part of the episode with Dai getting a ship. And just like in the video games, you eventually do get a ship, at least starting with Dragon Quest II. And there, he's heading over to another continent. So, once again, it follows the trends of a JRPG, a Dragon Quest game. But even if you have never played Dragon Quest, if you played a JRPG, even a Final Fantasy game, maybe not one of the more modern ones, but one of the older ones from Final Fantasy V and before, that's usually how it goes. I mean, you usually walk on land for a while, then you get in some kind of a vehicle. It might not be necessarily a ship, it might be an airship or a chocobo or whatever. But in Dragon Quest, usually you get a ship at one point, and then later on in the game, you get to upgrade to a flying vehicle, usually in the last third or so of the game, to explore the remaining continent. But of course, it depends on the game because there's different planets to explore and worlds to explore in some of the games. It just depends. But once again, though, I'm just making the point that it follows that trend. Like I said before in previous reviews, this show is like a JRPG video game, just it's an anime. Dai wants to make sure the princess, yes, the same one from episode 2, is still at Papnica Kingdom to protect her from the Dark Army. There's a conversation they have with a guy on the ship who explains to him a bunch of stuff. There's a lot of exposition here. He talks about how the ship is surrounded by holy water and thus monsters will not attack it unless they're very strong. He talks about how there's a lot of lore in Papnica because of the fact that it used to be a big stronghold. At least the continent was a big stronghold for Hadlar. And he talks about how he had this legion, this dark army legion of basically the undead, these almost unkillable monsters. And it's all done really to set things up. And I know some of you are asking, well, wait a minute, the arcs are only like a few episodes? Yeah, I mean, they really are. The arcs in the Dragon Quest Dai manga are not very long, but also remember that right now with the adaptation, we're on volume 4 of the manga, not chapter 4, don't get it twisted, volume 4, and each volume has, I forget if it's 9 or 10 chapters, so right now we're on volume 4, I forget if it's 9 or 10, it might be less than that actually, it might be like 7, I don't remember, I think it's like 9 or 10 actually, if I remember correctly, but anyways, right now we're about to hit the third sort of arc. Like the story arcs here are not like completely like distant, like for another anime, for example. You know what I mean? But they're smaller arcs, sort of like episodic arcs, but they're all building to something, if that makes sense. They all keep the story going. They're just the individual adventures kind of linked together in batches of like 3-4 episodes. That's kind of how it works. I believe it's actually like 4 or 5 because the first arc ended with episode 5. The second one ended with episode 9, even though part of it's here in episode 10. So let's just say that every 4 to 5 episodes, but later on there will be longer arcs. It's just we have to get there. Right now it's all sort of, planting the seeds for what would come later. Then we are introduced to one of the absolute coolest villains in Dragon Quest Dai. And this was not a Toriyama design, but I kind of wish it was because it really comes off like one. Like, if that makes sense. I don't mean like I wish it was, but it has that flair to it. This character is half ice, half fire, right? Split right down the middle like Two-Face. And he's called Blizzblaze. He is a Legion commander. Flazdard's his name, but Blizzblaze is like his, I guess, monster type or whatever. I actually messed that up. But anyways, half of this guy's body is ice, the other half is fire. And he just looks absolutely menacing. I mean, even more than Crocodile, this guy looks sadistic and scary. They have a conversation about Dai's battle with Crocodile. And basically, this is, if you've watched Sailor Moon and other shows like that or other video games, this is the next general that will face off against Dai in the upcoming stories. So you've seen this before. He's basically taking Crocodile's place. He will present a new challenge for Dai, and Dai will have to overcome it at some point. That, it's not that hard to figure that out. But they're not done. They introduce more of the generals here. They also introduced Dragon Legion Commander Dragon Master Baran. And even he's talking about how Dai has tremendous potential. So the other generals are indeed coming together here to figure out some ways to beat this guy, you know? During this council, they also introduced the Shadow Legion Commander, Misviern. So, the Shadow Vizier. Wacky-ass names, bro. And this guy also looks like a badass. These guys are all badass, bro. The dragon guy apparently wiped out a whole kingdom very, very fast. So, these are the real tough guys, more so than Crocodile. So, it turns out that it's actually Hyunkel who is picked to defeat Dai, who's not at the council. It was not the Fire Ice guy. It was Hyunckel. You know, that was my mistake for thinking that initially. But I'm doing this review as I'm watching. Like, I'm giving you my thoughts as I watch to kind of like, you know, that's how I'm doing this week's review. Is doing it that way. That way you kind of have my fresh thoughts, you know, right as something happens. So he's the guy who Dai will face off against next. But they're introducing these guys for the future. I actually do not remember in the manga how it goes in the order it goes. So there you go. So the heroes arrive and they find the kingdom is already under attack. They're about to face off against these skeletons, and suddenly this big blast comes out of nowhere, and Dai recognizes it as an Avant-style sword technique Earth Slash. So basically, the big revelation as time goes on is that Avant, before dying, trained a lot of different people to carry on the mantle as the next big party and as the next heroes to save the world. It wasn't just Dai that he saw potential in. There were many others, and perhaps he kind of knew that the others would become allies to Dai or just work together to eventually become the next batch of heroes. So there are people who have trained in his arts besides just the main characters that we know of now. Like, it's more than just 3 people. But in this case, it's something different because this guy with the silver hair, you know, we find out that 2 days ago the kingdom was destroyed and Princess Leona's missing, and he was Avant's first student, but it turns out that he's not what he seems because he is indeed Hyunkel, the commander that was sent directly from the Dark King to go take out Dai. And even though he's a human and was trained by Avant, it doesn't, he even says it himself, just because I was trained by Avant does not mean that I believe in justice and love. No, that also means that I can be a, you know, he basically says he loves violence and has embraced the darkness. So he was trained by Avant, but he didn't stay a good guy. He went evil. So now Dai has to face off against somebody who has Avant's training as well as is not a good guy, you know, and is very strong. They can't even believe this guy's a member of the Dark Army. And when they try to fight these skeletons, they have this way of kind of not regenerating. I guess it is a form of regeneration where they put their bodies back together. So that's why they call them immortal. They're not actually immortal, but they're very difficult to kill. This isn't how it was in the video game. This was added for the anime. I don't recall in the video games the basic skeletons having this ability. Dai takes him on one-on-one and does all of the Avant moves, and Hyunkel is able to deflect or block all of them. So, yeah, Dai's in trouble. And that's how we're going to have the cliffhanger end for this episode. Dai is in trouble. And next week, the battle continues. So, like this episode, again, there wasn't much to it as far as high-quality animation. It was just sort of a reset episode to build up the next arc and to introduce some new villains. It's a slower-paced episode, but again, like I've said before, you got to have those here in Dai. Let's see where the story goes. I'm starting to get dark on the story because I don't remember. I never finished the entire manga, and I don't remember some of this stuff from back in the day. So it's going to get exciting for me because I'm not going to really know where things are going, and that's a good thing. So anyways, that's it. Thanks for listening or watching my review. I hope you have a great day. Take care of yourself and each other.